The opening prayer. So we'll begin with the altruistic motivation. Maya, do you have a copy of this book? Very good. Okay, so we're going to recite the opening prayers. These set our motivation, our intention for why it is that we are receiving these teachings, why we do these practices, why we do these contemplations, etc. We do our studies. So the primary reason is that we do it for the benefit of others. So we are doing this for ourselves in order that we may be able to help other beings to attain enlightenment. So we begin by reading each of these prayers twice, where it's indicated as twice or three times, and twice in English and then once in Tibet. So please recite these out loud. Presumably, there's no one around that is going to be interrupted, and that'll be good. So we begin. All mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience, may they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly I will establish them in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. All mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience, may they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly I will establish them in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. Dagla dangwa je pe dra no pa je pe ge. Darpa dang tam she ken pe bar du jo par je pa tam she ki so je pe. Manam kadam yam pe sem chen tam she de wa dang den. Dug now dong drel nor du la na me pa yang dag pa zog pe shang ju bren po she to pa ja. Thus, until I achieve enlightenment, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Until death, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. From now until this time tomorrow, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. In Tibet. Te she du sang ma ge gi bar du lu na gi sam ge wa la ko. Ma she bar du lu na gi sam ge wa la ko. Du de ring ne song te ni ma sang ta sam gi bar du lu na gi sam ge wa la ko. We take refuge in the kind root and lineage lamas. We take refuge in the deities of the mandalas of the yidams. We take refuge in all the exalted Buddhas. We take refuge in the perfect Dharma. We take refuge in the excellent order of the Sanghas. We take refuge in all the noble Dakas, Dakinis, and Dharma guardians, possessors of the eye of wisdom. We take refuge in the kind root and lineage lamas. We take refuge in the deities of the mandalas of the yidams. We take refuge in all the exalted Buddhas. We take refuge in the perfect Dharma. We take refuge in the excellent order of the Sanghas. We take refuge in all the noble Dakas, Dakinis, and Dharma guardians, possessors of the eye of wisdom. Shren san sa wa dangur par je pe pal dan la ma dam pa nam la kap su chi o. Yedam kil gorgi la sok nam la kap su chi o. Sangye chom den de nam la kap su chi o. Dam pe cho nam la kap su chi o. Papege dunam la kapsu chio. Pawo kadro cho kyong song me song yeshe gi chang dang demba nam la kapsu chio. Taking the Bodhisattva vow. Until I attain the heart of enlightenment, I take refuge in all the Buddhas. I take refuge in the Dharma, and likewise in the assembly of the Bodhisattvas. As the previous Buddhas embraced the enlightened mind and progressed on the Bodhisattva's path, I too, for the benefit of all sentient beings, give birth to bodhicitta and apply myself to accomplish the stages of the path. Until I attain the heart of enlightenment, I take refuge in all the Buddhas. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Dharma and likewise in the assembly of the Bodhisattvas. As the previous Buddhas embraced the enlightened mind and progressed on the Bodhisattva's path, I too, for the benefit of all sentient beings, give birth to bodhicitta and apply myself to accomplish the stages of the path. Shangzhu Ningpo Chiki Bar Sangye Namla Kapsu Chi Chodang Shangshub Sampayi Soklang Deshin Kapsu Chi Zetar Nonggi Deshegi Shangshub Togni Ki Padan Shangshub Sampe La Pala De Dagrim Shin E Pata De Shin Drola Pendandu Shangshub Samni Ki Gishin De Shin Du Ni La Pala Rempa Shindu La Pajio. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. Sangye Chodang Soki Chonamla Shangju Badu Dagni Kapsuchi Dagi Jinsoki Pe Sonamgi Drola Penshir Sangye Jupasho. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. Manam kadam yam pe sem chen tam she dewa dang dewe gudang dempar jorchi. Dugnal dang donal gi gudang drawar jorchi. Dugnal me pe dewa dang mi drawar jorchi. Nei ring chak dang ni dang draway dang namla ne pa jorchi. Now we go to page 12. The Sagarimati requested sutra in English only. Likewise, be extinguished. Extinguish all enemies to my purpose. Whatever evil forces are in me, be defeated. Do this so that when I am victorious, all pure radiance melts into me, completely purified. Take all this knowledge, food, and drink peacefully. Enjoy it and be satisfied so that all obstacles may be destroyed. Be liberated from all obstacles, all general obstacles. Maras are defeated by this gesture of the Buddha. By reciting this mantra, may all the Maras be purified. As a result, may all the Maras be defeated. Thank you. So tonight is a bit of a discussion. Also want to talk about the fivefold path of Mahamudra. We've had a number of teachings in the past couple of weeks. Lama Gerson was here. And I wonder if anybody has any questions or comments that you'd like to bring up in regard to Lama Gerson's visit here, or anything that you've been working on or thinking about in terms of your Buddhist study or practice. So if anybody has anything that you'd like to comment on, please turn your microphone up on and just please speak right up. So everybody is firmly on the path. No questions. Everybody's got everything sussed out. That's wonderful. Okay, very good.
Lance, this is Sarah. I mean, I always have questions, but I don't like. I can monopolize the conversation with you privately on a one-to-one Zoom.
Well, Sarah, what is it? Maybe somebody else will be interested in hearing it too.
Well, yeah, okay. So I guess and it can be any type of question. It's like open form, or do you have a specific scope?
No, open forum right now.
Okay, cool. So I guess my question is more maybe to anyone who's been practicing a while, or just it's more of just like tips or wisdom, a question about wisdom related to I guess the practice. Has anyone ever, or you, like just going along? So I'm evolving right now with my meditation practice, right? And so the Transformation of Suffering, that book, rereading it, and then understanding what you've been doing on Sunday with us, because in the appendix of Transformation of Suffering, it goes over like some of the practices to help us get on the path and help us reach enlightenment. So I guess my question would be, has anyone backslid significantly, and then the internal conflict, the dilemma is so painful? Maybe that's something you can speak to personally, if you're willing, or anyone else, where you made these leaps and bounds and then found yourself like saying, oh, I made all this progress, almost like you went off your diet, you lost all this weight, and then you regained it like through like toxic water weight, and then you're suffering, kind of going back to the suffering, right? Like once you get what you want, protecting it. So grasping on to, I guess that's it right there. I'm answering my own question, right? You're grasping on to the stages you're working through and then trying desperately to protect that, but then we're in samsara, and then it's so painful. And I'm dealing with that a little bit right now. So I'm wondering if anyone, Lance, do you understand what I'm trying to ask? Because I feel like I'm all over the place.
Well, I think what you're trying to ask, you want to know if anybody's had any personal experience with, sort of, being in the study group and studying, doing practice or something, but for whatever reason, stop doing it, and how did they recover? How did they get back onto the path? Is that basically what you're asking?
Yeah, that's fundamentally what I'm asking. I'm finding some, we'll call it temptation, right, to come off the path, and like I guess for the lack of a better word, it's internally tormenting now to know like there's another way, and
What's the
I'm
other
struggling.
way? What's the other way?
living a life in dedication and service to others,
I see.
right? And so what I'm thinking about for me, because I'm in the world of money all the time, and like, and so making decisions, what true altruism is, like constant true altruism, right? Like easing the suffering, this idea of constant easing of the suffering someone else, and helping others. Like it dawns on me every day, like every moment I'm alive, the great responsibility I have in my body to help another human being, even if it's a smile.
Okay. Well, let's let
Does that make
somebody
sense?
else
Yeah,
answer the question. So,
sure.
Gary, I see you turned your microphone on. Did you have something you wanted to speak about?
Want to make sure I fully understand what Zara is saying. We live in the world as it is, and we have to be present in that world and remember our practice. But the world won't stop being what it is because of who we are, who we're trying to be. And we see the suffering every day. And we just have to be who we aspire to be as Buddhists as best we can.
Have you had the experience of like kind of dropping out for a time and then coming back in?
Not dropping out of everything. I have been in, I've been in some types of sessions and teachings for a while, and then dropped out of them, and but pretty much stayed in this teaching for a couple of years now, at least, and I've continued to practice. And that's exactly what it is. It's practice. So you find different ways on the path that have meaning to you at a particular time in life, given the challenges and that you have, and the fears that you may have.
Have you found the structure of what we talk about, of the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path? Has anybody found that to be useful in being able to either stay on the path or to recover after falling out for a time and coming back onto the path and going back to the very basics? Has anybody had that experience?
Yes.
Yeah, I thought I saw you shaking your head. Did you have a comment about that?
Talking to me?
Yeah, you.
Oh, I think that I've definitely had moments. I've showed I haven't been here in a few months, and I'm just coming back now. And I think that there is definitely, like, the Four Noble Truths have definitely, when I think about them, they definitely inspire me to do better and really dedicate more of myself to my practice. But I think particularly, I think that this experience of coming back to things is really kind of indicative of, like, the impermanence of the world, how everything is impermanent, and how there's like an ebb and flow to it. And I think that just knowing that this is something that I can always come back to, and that I can always kind of rest my mind in, kind of helps me feel less bad about the times where I feel like I could have been more dedicated to my practice.
Do you have a sense of a structure of the Buddhist practice, of what we're doing, what we talk about? Is there a structure that you recognize?
I do see a structure here, and I think that I would like to improve upon that structure in my life. I think that I've been meditating a lot. I meditate almost every day, but I think that I heard a quote where it's kind of like meditation is only kind of one leg on the stool, and you need the Dharma and like other teachings in order to kind of improve that. And so I am kind of curious about what I can do to kind of add those other legs to this stool, like in a metaphorical sense, if that makes any
No,
sense.
that's perfect sense. That's excellent. Yes. Yes, well, that's exactly what we've been trying to, promote, trying to show everybody, and for everybody to fit that into their schedule. To adopt a routine where they can hear the teachings, study the teachings, and do the practices. And what are the practices for? The practices are for that we practice being enlightened. Being a good person and being a noble person, having the qualities and activities of an enlightened being. Yes, Gary, you put your hand up.
I should mention it is something that you, I remember you saying that you always do, and something that I try to do every day, usually in the morning, first thing, is to actually read the 37 practices of bodhisattvas.
Okay.
It creates a set point in my mind for the rest of the day, whether I'm going to be at home or whether I go out into the world where there are going to be provocations and all kinds of things. Reading that, which he says you should do every day, is establishes kind of in your mind a framework of behavior and even constant meditation.
So that gives you a routine. That's your routine that you're doing every day.
It's a routine, and it sets in my mind. It tells me that there are going to be reasons for me not to practice. It warns me. It's a warning. There are warnings in there. And it has worked well for me, and certainly not perfectly, because I'm still working on it. But I would suggest to everyone that it would be a good thing to consider every day, as soon as you can, as early as possible, reading that. Because inevitably, if you move into the world, you're going to encounter the things anticipated by the 37 practices of bodhisattvas.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. Does anybody else? Yes, Mark.
By routine, do you mean structure?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Does anybody else have a comment about structure, about a routine, about Zara's initial question was, has anybody had a situation of kind of, I think she first used the word backsliding, or maybe falling out of the practice, falling out of the study, but then coming back to it, and what your experience with that has been. So whether it was something that was fairly recent, or it was something that might have been years old, that something happened many years ago where you had an opportunity to be involved with spiritual study and practice, but for whatever reason you dropped out and then came back in. Maybe you came back into this group, or there was another group or something like that. So does anybody else have a comment? Yes, Matt.
It's that's definitely been my experience for a while, like that cycle. And for me, it was this thing where, like, and when my life would start getting like a little too good, like things would start kind of humming for me or working for me, and like some SARS seemed to be feeling pretty good. It's almost like drugs or something. Like, like, oh, like, I was younger, I get this girlfriend, she's pretty, this is feeling good. Like, whatever, I'm getting praised, I'm doing this, like things. And then it's like I would slide away, and then the suffering would come back in this big way. And then it's like a dog with his tail tucked between his legs that kind of come back to Dharma practice. And it would be this kind of thing, a lot of this. And it's a bit cartoonish of what it was actually like, but something kind of like that. And for me, and I think this is something Maya had mentioned, this word that for working with it, or me working with it now, is the idea of impermanence. I know I talk a lot about, when I talk about my practice, a lot of like the four thoughts and everything. And for me, it's really getting clear on like, what is my, like, if this is the strategy, Dharma's strategy for happiness and well-being to the ultimate level of enlightenment or something, of like, what is my current strategy then? My non-dharma strategy been for happiness, and getting really clear about it and seeing it's really through the eight worldly dharmas like that, because it's intoxicating. It can feel good. It works for a period of time, the same way drugs work for a period of time. This is my viewer experience. But that's seeing like really clearly, like it's not going to work because of the impermanence, and how much of what I'm doing is actually trying to make things that are impermanent permanent. As if I'm going to be able to like solidify these feelings and feel good enough. And if I get enough praise, or I get praise this time, or at least I get it often enough, or this or that, like I'm going to make these feelings go away and everything. But like it can't work. It's never going to work. But it's very intoxicating. So I'm sorry, that's the thing. It's so much pain, so painful, but it's very intoxicating at the same time, or can be. So for
So
me, impact impermanent.
can you pick a word or a phrase or a sentence or something to try and identify what it is that you're coming back to?
Mm. Um, n- not non-ego, or maybe maybe non-ego, something like that, or yeah, not thinking I'm going to be able to through the ego find what I'm looking for. Something, it's not very eloquent, but something like that.
So in other words, if I can paraphrase, then maybe the attachments or that temporary happiness that you were talking about was all egocentric,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
and realizing, oh, this has done nothing but get me in some kind of trouble.
Mhm.
It wore itself out, and now I need to get back to the non-ego. And so the question, the thing that I keep on bringing up is there a structure there? Do you appreciate the structure? Is that a meaningful thing for you?
Yeah, that's a super meaningful thing, and that's also because I need the reminders, I need the structure, and that's why, for me at least, as like almost like part of my practice is I really try to make a point to come to all of these groups, you know. And there'll be some nights, whatever, I'm coming late from work, like I don't really feel like going. I don't want to just sit there and do it, but like I'm always happy I ended up doing it. But it's like that's one thing I just, because that does help me keep on the track too, and then like have the structure and the routine and other people. But being able to structure my practice more has definitely been helpful for me recently since joining the group. And I'll shut up after this. But like the other thing that I think is important in my view to see, or like to see too, like with the ego of doing the things for the ego, is like it's mixed though, like there might be the attachment, but it's mixed. Like it's actual love there too. It's not like it's just like this ego thing that I'm going through, or it's all ego. It's like it gets very mixed up and it gets kind of messy, and it's hard to see sometimes. Uh, Something like that.
What is hard to see? I didn't understand that.
Hard to see like attachment to people. For example, you're talking about kind of the non-attachment. Is that the attachment actually is mixed up with true love, true selfless love. It's not all ego, that's, so it can be kind of hard to see, like there'll be this, maybe there's some of this codependent type of thing or something with people, but there's also this like pure genuine love for the person as well.
Right.
It's kind of mixed, so it can be hard to see the difference sometimes.
Very good. Thank you very much.
For me, it can be hard to see the difference. I'm not saying for everyone.
Does anybody else have an experience or situation that you'd like to talk about? Well, okay. Thank you for everybody who said something. Zara, I'd like to come back to you. And you said something in introducing this idea that you said that it's something you're going through now. So do you feel like that there's a slippage or something like that, or you're losing track, or uh, what did you mean to say when you were referring to that? Was it something in the past?
No, and thank you everyone who was willing to like share, and thank you for opening up the dialogue. I think what what I'm struggling with from a very practical perspective is I become so in like this exponential growth, Lance and anyone else who may be similar, or Gary, if you've experienced, or Matt, or anyone else, I'm so acutely aware now of like every action, Lance, right? Where I'm like catching it where it's painful. Cause like in the moment, I'm like, it's almost like, you know how sometimes you've heard the expression ignorance is bliss, like not knowing. And now that I'm so almost hyper aware, even when I think about thoughts that I know are not pure and good, I'm like, wow, I know there's a rebound, right? From those thoughts, I'm catching them. And that part's painful. It's not that I want to take away the knowledge that I have about becoming enlightened, but it's like, the more I know, the more it's like stepping on the scale. It's like, wow, there's so much more. And it's almost easier just to get off the scale, because right now I'm going through almost action by action and thought by thought. And I'm like, that's ego, and that's coming from desire. That's ego. That's coming from greed, where I don't know if anyone else had that as you were going through like, maybe this is a natural developmental phase, Lance, that I'm going through, where I'm so observational within my thought patterns. And then I know there's a rebound. Like, I'm so aware, like that's going to produce some negative karma. It may be so small, but I'm so aware of
Understand.
now. Yeah. So
Yeah,
that's what I'm talking about. Yeah.
There's another example of that is sitting and doing meditation.
Yes.
When you first sit and do meditation and you say, okay, I'm going to sit here for 10 minutes or 15 minutes, whatever it is. And then you start to feel all these body things happening,
Yes.
and they're distracting from, trying to empty your mind, so to speak, but those things, they were there the whole time, these body things, your heart beating, it's cold, it's hot, your leg doesn't feel quite right, you're not quite comfortable. But now you have the time, you have that peace, that meditation time to feel all those things. You're recognizing all those things that before you were just ignoring, because it was just all part of the wash of things that are happening to us and so on. So our awareness becomes a little bit more focused on these things. You can recognize these things. So the question becomes, how do we let go of those things? What do we do to replace those things? Gary, you had your hand up.
Yes, you and I were talking recently about, I shared with you that I had bought a book, Vajra Speech, which you have, which is so much more than a dictionary or a Bible, but it's a seminal piece, and written by Tulku Rinpoche. And I just looked up, not in the book, but in another place, he talks about recognizing the dualistic mind activity of thinking, and letting, it's not that you don't have thoughts, you will have them, but letting those thoughts dissolve, so that they lose all their power and they dissolve into the expanse of your Buddha nature. And so if I'm understanding what Zara is saying, the thoughts are always there, but not clinging to them, learning to let them keep moving. Don't grasp at them. You're going to have the thoughts. Most of us have grown up with pattern of behavior that was a servant of thinking, and now we have to deal with that. And so I don't know if that is helpful, but I found him very helpful, and I found that book very helpful. And the thoughts will be there, you will see them, and you just don't grasp at them. You let them go.
My answer to all this is having the structure of a daily practice, because that leads to so many other things. That leads, through having a practice, we're giving ourselves permission to take time for ourselves, to be in a place where there's nothing else that we're going to do except this practice. And part of that practice is the quiet. the quietude, and being able to experience that in our physical being, in our intellectual being, and in our heart. So the question I'd have for everybody here is, are you doing that? And if you're not doing that, why aren't you doing it? We've gone through and we've outlined, I mean, we've done more than outline. We've specifically said, here is the practice. And if you start with this practice and do this practice, then if you want to change it up a little bit, you can do that, of course. But first, adopt the structure. Would anybody like to comment on that?
Can I comment on what Zara was saying for a second?
I'm sorry, say that again.
I was wondering if I could speak to what Zara was saying.
Okay, go ahead.
Zara, does it feel like, because I know you have a lot of expertise in like psychology and behavior and stuff, that the practice, it's like it's becoming it's getting like wrapped up in this kind of neuroses around it, like this hyper fixation on hormones, thoughts, like that. That's kind of like that's what's happening.
So today I was at working at a special needs camp, and like every thought, I'm like, what? Like I'm like, oh, where's that from? Like, and because I'm so now aware of, I think someone in this group said, to like a rebound when you're playing racquetball, the more aware you become of it, the quicker the ball strikes back. It's like, now that you're on the path, and so then the karma, cause and effect, the cause and consequences, right? So like you have to think about where these actions, the thoughts, the actions, the whole cycle, when you become so acutely aware of it, and then you see it in your day-to-day life. And that's, I'm in my head too much about it. And it's all I'm not paralyzing myself. What I'm doing is actually helpful, going back, Lance, to your question, because I'm studying this outside of my real context. I'm able to course correct quickly, but it's almost like, I can't do it for everything, right? Like I can maybe do 10% of my thoughts, right? But now I'm like, every person I see, I'm like, do I have a responsibility to fix this right now, right? Like Zara, like you're about to do this for ego, like be better right now. It's overwhelming to try to change all of who you are overnight, if that makes sense, right? The thoughts. And I think, Lance, you always say, go slow, but like, I know now, like kind of, oh shit, I just got a whole bunch of negative karma coming my way from that. And I don't know if that's just the way, Lance, maybe you're just like, keep practicing it. And then over time, Gary, I think you're saying like all of a sudden it just floats by, and that is actually the beauty. I don't know, but yes, getting to your practical question, that's what I'm doing. Yes. I'm in my head. Yes.
Yeah, I don't know. I think too, and even at a certain time in my spiritual practice earlier on, where I think it can get on, like the spiritual practice can take on unhealthy forms at times too, where for me it was a little bit different when I first started, where I was like very much like this zealotry, this like obsessiveness about, like it was just like, it was too much. It wasn't like enough natural unfolding of things and letting things be. It was just, I don't know, but maybe from a tradition perspective, maybe that opposite of that should be true. Maybe you should be focusing that much all the time, but I don't know.
Okay. Is anybody taking a time out? Do you take a time out from your day and just try and just let it all relax and not be responsible for anything for that particular time, and just let it be?
Yeah. When I meditate, before I kind of tell myself there is nothing to figure out, to kind of rest within that. And I feel like when you tell yourself that, it kind of organically, it helps. I think of meditate. I'm sure this metaphor has been used before, but like, your thoughts are like clouds in the sky, and the nature of your mind is like the blue, and you're cloud watching. I feel like telling yourself that can kind of, help you observe those clouds in a sense.
Yeah, that's a very good metaphor.
And also I just wanted to comment, I think that this path, I think we should allow ourselves, we should forgive ourselves, I think, and show compassion towards ourselves. I think that does showing compassion towards yourself generate good karma?
Absolutely.
So I think that if we cradle this very tender part of ourselves, then I think it will help us grow in our practice. And I was thinking that as Zara was talking.
Yeah, I think that's a huge point. And, we've talked about it several times, but yes, you have to have compassion for yourself, because we know that there's something that we want to do. There's something we want to accomplish, even if it's the resting, we want to accomplish that. And when we're not doing that, we have to have compassion for ourselves and give ourselves the opportunity to find the resting, so that's the point I keep trying to drive, is that we have to create the structure for that. We have to budget the time in our day to do that. Just by wishing for it doesn't make it happen. We've got to make it happen. Is that what you do, Maya? Do you, you say you're meditating every day. Have you, made a promise to yourself that I'm going to do this meditation, at a certain time every day, or at least once every day at some, and then you try and keep that. Is that correct?
Yes, yeah.
And how's that worked out for you?
I think that it's really nice that I have this. I think that having it's like something I know that I can always return to. And since it has become such a large part of, my day-to-day, it feels very natural at this point.
If you didn't do it, what would you do? What would you be doing?
I think that I would be a lot more stressed and a little bit ignorant of, the way that I react to things.
Okay. So you're obviously then a calmer person as a result, a more balanced person. Is that, I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but
That's true. Yeah.
but by way of this promise that you made to yourself of creating this structure, it's been very helpful to you.
Yeah.
And do thoughts of what happened yesterday or thoughts of what's going to happen today or tomorrow come into your mind during that period of rest, of meditation? Do those kind of thoughts enter your mind?
I think that sometimes they do, but
And how do you deal with that?
I think I try to accept them, those thoughts. I try to accept maybe the fear and then let it go if I can, but I think I still have to work on that a little bit.
So you're trying not to dwell on it,
Yeah.
and you're trying to maintain the space of
Yeah.
the meditation.
Mhm.
And not again to put words in your mouth, but is that a happy time for you?
I would say so. Yeah. Yeah.
Is it the happiest time of your day?
I think that it allows me to experience more happiness in my day. I think that the point of a meditation practice is, once you're done meditating, you're supposed to get up and kind of have that air of mindfulness. And so I think that it helps me it helps me experience happiness in a much more kind of pure form, if that makes sense.
Yes. I think we all have a tendency to multitask. We've all gotten really good at multitasking, doing several things at once. And in some regard, the contemplation meditation is included in that. because we want to meditate, we want to empty our minds, but at the same time, we're multitasking, thinking about all these other things and so on. So the point here is that we need a method to be able to rest all those thoughts and say, I'm not going to think about that right now. And maybe, have a piece of paper and a pencil nearby and write down some of those disturbing thoughts and say, I'll deal with that later. Right now, I'm resting, and try and stop the multitasking, and have that experience every day during this period. And then I think that you'll be wanting to expand that period of quietude, more and more. You'll want that to last longer. You'll find that to be the best part of the day. Does anybody else have any comments about this that you'd like to talk about? Any unanswered question? Zara, do we,
Yeah, no, this was helpful, and I loved all the organic. I always love these conversations, and I love that you've allowed the freedom for us to kind of talk more loosely in the structure, because there was a couple of things that just kind of came up that were profound for me. And like number one, is it Maya or Maya? Maya?
It's Maya.
Maya, it's so pretty. What a beautiful name.
Thank you.
I love that you just pointed out, like, grace and compassion to ourselves accumulates positive karma. Like, I always forget that, but self-love is the number one thing, part of this journey. And I've forgotten that, even though it's so silly. And you just said that, and I was like, duh. Like, I know that, yet it's so profoundly obvious. I forgot that. And like, so Matt's like, are you a little neurotic right now? And I'm like, yeah. And then the self-love, and like, that's wisdom, and that's discernment, and saying, oh, like, be gentle, like, this is what enlightenment is. Like, everyone before you has gone through this process, and this is part of your suffering to go from samsara to, and hopefully the quest towards nirvana this is part of it, and it's nothing extraordinary that I'm experiencing. And that just makes it a little bit better. I guess, if that makes sense. Lance, does that make sense?
Well, yeah, I understand exactly what you're saying. And the thought that comes to my mind is, I don't know if they got a term for it in psychology or whatever, but replacement therapy. In other
Sure.
words,
Yes. I understand what you're saying. Yeah.
in other words, do we keep saying the same thing over to ourselves, into our neuroticism, that we become neurotic because there's a negative tendency, and we keep reinforcing it by saying it over and over and over again to ourselves? It's the conversation we have with ourselves. Or
Right.
do we say, I got to stop saying that? But to just stop saying that is really hard. But if I have a replacement for that, now I can direct my brain, my attention, to this replacement that has a positive connotation to it, that will actually neutralize that negativity, that direction of going into the neurotic. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yes, it does, to answer your question. Yeah. It's been really helpful. So I thank you for allowing me to ask the question, and I thank everyone who contributed to the conversation. I personally benefit, so thank you.
You're welcome. Well, how practical is that replacement? Is that something that's done in psychology, in teaching psychology or practicing psychology with people? Replacing negativity with positivity?
Well, absolutely. And I don't know, like, how much everyone else knows about it, but I mean, like, it's profound. The people you have closest to you that are near you are positive or neutral, because like what you're around is what you become, right? Like, you're around negativity, like that's what you gravitate towards naturally. So yeah, so the idea is, like, we would want to replace, however, like, I'll say this, and if anyone else wants to say anything, that's fine. I think if you say, like, Lance, don't think about that cookie, what are you going to think about? You're going to think about the cookie, right? So right. So there's also some practicality about, like, telling someone not to think about a thing, whether it's positive or negative, because then you're gonna be like, That's actually a very difficult skill, just to drop the thought. If someone says, stop thinking about that. Okay, well, now I'm going to think about the yellow marker because you just told me to stop thinking about it. That's a very difficult skill, and I don't know how easy that is for anyone else, but whenever people tell me to not think about something, it actually hasn't made it easier. But that's why I like this whole practice, the structure, right? Like loving kindness, compassion, joy, equanimity. That is what I should be thinking about always. And maybe that's what you mean. Maybe that's the spirit of what you mean, is that structure, and that sequence and structure gives you the positive curriculum and substance that fills where the negative holes would have filled. Maybe that's what you mean, Lance. I don't know.
Well, ultimately, that's correct. And it's what Maya had said before about, we have to have compassion for ourselves. So, we have to be mindful that we're suffering. And that's why we have the compassion, because we recognize we're suffering. Matt had his hand up, or he turned his microphone on for a moment and then turned it off again. Did you want to add something to that, Matt?
I don't even know what I was going to say. Probably whatever the normal nonsense I say, fill in the blank with that kind of thing. No, I don't remember. I'm trying to think what I was going to say. I don't know, but I do think the idea of the self-compassion is a really important thing. I'm glad we brought that up. Something I need to incorporate. It's kind of like it sounds like what Zara's saying too. There is a certain like harshness to my practice. Now that I think about it. Yeah.
Okay.
Things get a little tight and like, it's kind of, I don't know.
Well, we don't have to answer the question now, but I put it out there, and the question is, are you doing a practice? And if you're not, why not? And are you following the instructions that we have set forth? I mean, the purpose of coming together like this is to learn the teachings of the Buddha. And the Buddha, gave us a great gift, was a human being who gave us a great gift of a system in which to liberate ourselves from our suffering and all the myriad forms in which our suffering comes and so on. So we should be, at the very least, taking the direction of the Buddha and following these instructions and implementing this into our lives and seeing the result. If we don't do it, we're never going to see the result, or we may wish that we're going to see it by not doing it, but does it really happen? But if you ask those who have taken these directions, who have done these practices and engaged in these, and says, oh yes, it really works. And as a matter of fact, I do it every day, because if I don't, I'm going to slip backwards and lose whatever I've been able to gain, whatever accomplishment I've been able to gain. So to come to that realization, that if we don't do these things, we're only fooling ourselves. It's our arrogance that says, oh, I can work my way through this without that. I don't need that. That's one of the stains. They talk about the 6 stains, that you're sitting in a teaching, with 50 other people or 100 other people or whatever, and you're sitting there, and maybe many other people are sitting there, and they're all thinking, listening to the teacher, saying, this guy don't know what he's talking about. I don't even know why I'm here. I know better than him or her. Could very well be a woman, that's one of the stains, that not listening and taking the advice and doing those things. Do the things, follow the advice, perform the instructions and so on. And then if after a period of time of commitment to that, then let's talk about it again and tell me, oh, it didn't work. Oh, it did work. Oh, it's working to some degree or something like that. But without doing it, I think you're totally missing the point. So I hope I'm not being too harsh in saying that, but I think that that's part of human nature to want to do that, to our arrogance to think, oh, I know better than the teacher. All right. Well, let's leave it here for right now. You can ponder these thoughts. We're recording this so you can watch it again if you want to refresh your memories, or maybe you've been taking notes. But on the subject of structure, and I think this might be the last discussion that we have on this, because I think this is the last part of the dual ornamental liberation that we really haven't talked about. The question of this chapter, which is chapter 18, is that this is the antidote to not knowing the method of practice for achieving Buddhahood. I'll repeat that again. The antidote, the remedy for not knowing the method of practice for achieving Buddhahood. If we're sitting here and our goal is not to attain Buddhahood, then I'm not quite sure why we're sitting here. So the problem is we don't know how to get there, but here it's being shown to us how we get there. This is part of that, is this method of what's called the aspects of the 5 paths. So everything is this structure. We got all these different structures we're talking about. So this is like the master path, the 5-fold path of Mahamudra. So you've seen the word Mahamudra, and you've uttered it many times every time we say our dedication prayers, because it's embedded in the prayers for that. And Mahamudra, Maha is a Sanskrit word that means great. And mudra can mean a couple different things. One meaning of it is that it is a position. It is a stance. It is a place, here is my position. The Mahamudra, this is the great position that I am taking. Another definition for the mudra is it's a seal. A seal in the way that if you have some sealing wax and you're sealing an envelope, and you take the seal and you press it into the warm wax, and it seals it with this wisdom, with this practice, with this skillful means. It's sealing it, this great position, this great seal. And what it's sealing, what it is sealing, what this position is the mind. Is recognizing the mind as it is, such as it is, realizing this is what we have to work with. Everything is experienced through our mind, isn't it? Everything that we see, hear, all the different senses, and so on are all processed with the mind, and then we're processing it as, this is my experience, this is my sight, this is what I hear, this is what I do, this is what I think. It's the I, me, mine. Our consciousness is wrapped up in the I, and so on. And then the next thing that is wrapped up in the mind is the consequences of all that. What I am as a result of all these different experiences that I'm going through. And this becomes the holder, if you will, the storehouse of the karma. The part of the mind that is recalling all of this, that is remembering all this, and won't let go of it. It's holding on to it. It's holding on to the good things. Oh, I did these good things. Oh, I'm a much better person. I'm holding on to that. It's also holding on to the bad things. Remembering, there might be 20 things in your lifetime right now that you can recall that every time you think about it, you kind of go, oh, was I stupid? Oh, did I say that? And every now and again, those remembrances come up, and you wish they would go away. But the mind is the storehouse of these things. And what we're trying to do is to clear out that storehouse, to let it go. A while ago, we were talking about the 12 links of interdependent origination. And we were talking about the cycle of birth and how a human being develops and so on. And the final 12th link was the link of of the human being who is walking down the path of life and is carrying this bag on his shoulder. And this bag is very heavy and carrying it. And so what it was demonstrating was, this is our karma. This is the results of all the things that we're holding on to. And that ultimately what we want to do is start picking all those things out and leaving them behind. We don't need them anymore until there's no bag. We're emptying the storehouse. We're liberating our mind from all these attachments and aversions. So these 5 aspects of the 5, or these aspects of the 5 paths then becomes the method of how to do that at a beginning level, at a medium level, and at a very high level. So we need to understand what these aspects of the 5 paths are, and this will resonate with you in different ways, but it becomes an introduction so that you can see where we're going. It's like I'm handing you a book, and before we get too deep in the book, we're going to look at the table of contents, and you're going to get a context of what this book is about, rather than opening up to page 252 and start looking at that, or start looking at the index and seeing all these words, or looking at the glossary and seeing all these words and so on. We're looking at the table of contents. So the first of these is the path of accumulation. This is the first of the 5-fold path of Mahamudra. The Mahamudra is the great mind, right? The great mind. So this accumulation, this path of accumulation, is accumulating wisdom and skillful means. And we can replace those words, wisdom and skillful means, with loving kindness is the wisdom, and compassion is the skillful means. If we have wisdom, if we know how to do something, but we just keep that wisdom to ourselves, we don't do anything with it, it just stays in our brain, it's not really doing much good. But if we're able to actualize that wisdom through our speech, through teaching, talking, expressing what this wisdom is and how it helps, or doing something with our hands, and we're creating something with our hands and so on, that's the compassion. That's the skillful means. That's the method of actualizing the wisdom. So this first aspect of the 5 paths is the accumulation of the wisdom and the skillful means. So this is another way of saying bodhicitta, coming to realize that we have this true nature, all the things that we've been talking about, that we have this true nature in our heart center, and that the physical body and that the intellectual brain are servants to this heart center, to this true nature that we have. And beginning to put all that together, to be able to recognize that, to slow things down and give ourselves the opportunity for that wisdom and skillful means to arise on its own. So it's kind of like, the cream in a freshly pail of milk that was just taken from the cow. And if you let it sit for a while, the cream will begin to rise to the top and so on. So the cream in this case is the bodhicitta. So we're not just letting it rise, we're cultivating it. We're making it happen. We're learning how to do that. We're learning to recognize it in all of its myriad forms through all the teachings that we've been learning in the jewel ornamental liberation and so on. And then we're finding out the things that suppress it. And we're also finding the things that open it up to allow that oppression, that suppression to fade away and to let those things come up. And we deal in the real time with those issues that are our blockages, our confusions, our obscurations, and so on, so that so what we're doing is neutralizing that negativity, that confusion. We're neutralizing it. We're not suppressing it. We're enlightening it. This is all the path of accumulation. The second of the path is the path of application. How do we use this? What are we going to do this with? And what are examples of how to do this? Not just painted words or printed words, but can we see this in phenomenal nature? Can we recognize this being done in places around us that maybe we haven't seen before, we haven't recognized before? So what this is being able to recognize the enlightened ones. There are enlightened beings all around us that we're meeting every day, that we talk to, and we are those enlightened ones. Sometimes we say some things that are so profound and so pure and so wonderful, but we're not paying attention and we don't realize that that's what we're doing. We're good people already. We're enlightened people already. We just don't recognize it. So we need to come to a place where we can begin to be quiet enough to not have all the distractions that prevent us from being able to recognize the subtleties of this wisdom, of this pure nature, of these things, to hear it within ourselves, to hear it from each other, to be able to recognize, well, this person has some wise things to say, and I really appreciate that. This person over here maybe doesn't have quite as much wise things to say, but they have a certain zest for life, or they have a certain enthusiasm that I can appreciate. Everybody's got their gifts, but then maybe there's somebody over here who's really kind of extra special in that they have the karma, or they have the experience, they have the consolidation of energy that really exudes this wisdom, and they are really leading an enlightened life, that they are doing things day in and day out that are helping other beings and not causing any suffering whatsoever to any beings, and like that. That there are beings like that, and that we go see those beings, we read about those beings, we take lessons from those beings, because they become our exemplars. They are taking the bodhicitta and are applying it every day to everything that they do. It's the action bodhicitta prayer that we recite in our opening prayers. Thus, until I achieve enlightenment, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. That everything I do with body, speech, and mind is bodhicitta. And there are beings who do that. And we do that to some degree ourselves. And to be able to recognize this as the path of application. And what we're trying to do, of course, is to make it better. We're trying to make it more deep, more recognizable for ourselves and for other beings. We're doing this for the benefit of others. So this is the path of application of what was the accumulation. So in order for us to help us to do that, we've got these exemplars. These are the enlightened ones. And this is the deity yoga practices that we've been starting to do on these Sunday practices. These are the very, very, very best, the perfect examples of how to do these things. So if you're wondering how do I do it, this is how you do it at the very highest level. So to take in those teachings and to practice those teachings is very important. And if we don't do the accumulation of bodhicitta in the beginning, which is remembering our opening prayers, remembering the refuge we're taking, remembering the bodhicitta. That's why we do those things, because we're creating a stream of consciousness. So we're locking in, we're tuning into that radio station that is this liberation, this freedom, this peacefulness. So then we engage in the practice of becoming an enlightened being. Now, to whatever degree we can do that is going to be relative to our commitment, relative to the time we put into it, relative to our attention to it, all these different things, but it grows. It's organic. It'll grow on its own if you let it. But if you keep interrupting it, it's so subtle, it's going to get swamped by all the noise. So we need to be able to rest around there and let it come up naturally, and then give ourselves the opportunity to recognize it, because it is our nature. It's within us to be able to do that. So the next of the path is the path of insight. This is the third. The third path of the fivefold path of Mahamudra is the path of insight. So what is the path of insight? But the recognition of all the myriad ways in all this is happening. It's happening all around us. This samsara is nirvana. It's a very thin line that separates the two. It's only a moment. It's two sides of the same hand. It's just an attitude that separates nirvana from samsara. If samsara is suffering, nirvana is happiness. And it's just a matter of changing your attitude. Seeing that this difficulties that we're having here are problems that we need to solve. This is why we have this human life, in order to solve these things so that we can ultimately liberate ourselves and all other beings from this confusion into this happiness, but at the same time, not to become attached to the happiness either, not to have aversion for the suffering, nor attachment for the happiness, because both leads us down a path of ultimate suffering. So what we need to do is just to relax. We keep getting back to this relaxing. We get back to this quietude. We get back to this freedom, to the liberation. And remember the Eightfold Path, the four Noble Truths. The fourth Noble Truth is the Eightfold Path. And the first of the Eightfold Path is right view, and the right view is freedom. Everybody, everything wants to be free. So this insight is beginning to recognize all this stuff that is around us as the Buddha field, as our Buddha, as our mandala, our experiential palace, in which we're experiencing all this. All this is coming to us, and we're processing all this, not in a negative way, but in a very positive way, because we're taking what might be these negative things and turning them around, neutralizing them. And by neutralizing them, there's no positive, there's no negative. So this path of insight has many, many, many teachers to it. And the teachers are all the masters who have come before us. And if we try to do this all by ourselves, alone, in this ocean of suffering, we're bound to get lost in the whirlpools of the ocean and of the rainstorms of the sky and all these different things that we can create metaphors for. We're bound to get lost into these things. So therefore, we have these three jewels, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, the body, the speech, and mind of the Buddha to help us through this. And this body, speech, and mind of the Buddha has taken many, many, many other forms, many other bodies, many other lives, and we can learn about them. We can open ourselves up to them and learn from their experiences, which support us. You know, we see that all these things are possible because all these beings have done it. And maybe we can learn lessons that we don't need to recreate that experience for ourselves. We can learn it from somebody else, and that vicarious experience through somebody else becomes our gnosis. It's quite possible. The gnosis is when you know it yourself, when you recognize it yourself. It's like when you put your hand on the hot stove, and your mother's been telling you, don't put your hand on the hot stove, but there's the day when you go put your hand on the hot stove, and now you have the gnosis of that burning, right? So the same thing happens with enlightenment. You know, that there's many awakenings, there's many realizations that we have to have on our own. You can read about it in a book, there's a vicarious experience there, but until you recognize it yourself, you see it yourself, you have the insight of what it took to get you to that point, then having that experience, having that insight is brought to us by way of the masters, or they're there to help us, to support us. So this is one of the insights, and to accept that guidance, that help. It would be the fool who says, oh, I don't need that help. I can do it all by myself. Thank you very much. And then bam, you got another cycle of a lifetime to go through the experience till you get to that decision block to say, well, are you ready to accept the help now? You say, oh, no, I can do it. Okay, another lifetime for you. Okay, well, now I'm ready. And now all of a sudden, it's like putting high octane gasoline in your car. Zoom, you start going. So this is the path of insight, the path of realizing this for yourself. Through the path of accumulation, the bodhicitta, the application of being able to see how it works within ourselves, how we do this for others, how by helping others and so on. This is how we are honing the edge. This is how we're purifying. This is how we're taking the knife edge and we're sharpening the knife edge. How we're polishing the diamond. We're ridding all the impurities and so on. This is the path of application. Then in the path of insight, now I can see through it. Now I can see all the facets. Now I can see all the qualities and all the activities. All this is coming to bear. So this becomes the completion of the deity yoga. Remember, we were talking about the generation stage and the completion stage. We talked about this yesterday when we were talking about Manjushri. You know, that in the beginning of the deity yoga is the generation stage. We're visualizing the physical attributes and all that kind of stuff and the thoughts and so on like that. But then the completion stage is when we become the deity, when we dissolve, all that light dissolves into us, then we dissolve into the space, into the light itself. And then as we do that, now we have these insights. Now we begin to have these visions. Now we begin to see the glimpses all coming together, coalescing together as this great Mahamudra, as this great picture. You know, that, oh, this is my goal. This is what I'm going for. So then we've said that many times, you know, this whole process is like a 2,000-piece jigsaw puzzle that we have to put together without a picture. So we find the straight edges, we find the corners, we find the frame, the boundaries, which is relatively easy. Then we have to study and we have to examine, we have to contemplate all the interior pieces to find what fits together. This is the insight. Being able to do all that. And there's plenty of trial and error. But this is the enjoyment. This is the enjoyment body. This is the Sambhogaya. These are the meditational deities. So then when we have that, restfulness, we have that peacefulness, without any effort at all, we slip, if you want to use that word, we slip right into the Mahamudra, into that meditation mind that is beyond the concept of mind. That's how subtle it is. The mind, when we say mind, we're creating a concept of what it is, the process of how we think and do all these things and so on. But again, that's just another one of the concepts. So the Mahamudra is beyond that. If you can, it's impossible to imagine. And it's got to be experienced. And there's no forcing it to happen. You have to approach it, give it all the conditions, give it all that it needs to be able to slip right into that. It just transcends on its own. So all this other stuff is the contemplation, the study, the practices, all that is all mental focus, skillful means to do all that. Now we have to rest all that. And it just rises. We're using another word. It rises, It's here already. We're already enlightened. We just got to give ourselves the opportunity to experience it. So this is the Mahamudra. And there's lots that is written about Mahamudra, about the approach of the Mahamudra, how to approach it, what it is to approach it. And everything we've been talking about are all methods in that for that purpose and so on. But then also what to do with that mind or with that meditation after the experience of the meditation. So we say there's the meditation, then there's the post-meditation. And they become inseparable from each other. In the beginning, you have the meditation, then it's like you wake up and the meditation is gone. You say, oh man, that was great. I really enjoyed that. That's what that freedom was. Well, how do I explain that? I don't have any words for it. Oh, it was love. Oh, it was compassion. Oh, it was bodhicitta. I have all these nice words for it, but it's gone. You're just trying to intellectualize it. But in meditation that becomes inseparable from post-meditation means that you're getting up off the cushion and doing all the things that you normally do, but still in that meditation mind. Is it possible? Of course, I wouldn't be sitting here if it wasn't. And you can read about others' experiences. You can ask other people about the experiences, and they'll tell you more or less what I've said. There's points that, you can have glimpses of and so on like that, but it has to be experienced by yourself. And once we get to that, as we are approaching those levels of purification, then we're taking the things out of the bag. We start saying, you know what, I don't need that neuroticism anymore. I don't need those thoughts anymore. I don't need those attachments. I don't need those aversions. Let me get rid of them. Let me take them out of the bag. And a metaphor for that becomes, we become like the fool on the hill. You've heard that expression, you know? You've seen the images of the Buddha who is just sitting there quietly, uninterrupted, you know, who's just sitting there and everything's going by them. But we become like that, figuratively speaking. You know, it's all happening. It just penetrates us. We penetrate it, but we're not fazed by it. We're not interrupted by it. So this is the Mahamudra. This is what we are working towards. This becomes the great meditation. In some traditions, in our tradition, the Kagyu tradition, they call this the Mahamudra. In another tradition called the Nyingma tradition, is another sect of Tibetan Buddhism. They call it the Great Perfection, or the Dzogchen. Maybe you've heard that word. In Zen, they call it Satori. You know, so in all these different traditions in Buddhism, as well as other traditions in the Christian and in the Judaism and in the Hinduism and in the Islamic, I'm sure, in the Tao practices and so on, they have this experience. This experience is part of what it is to be in that tradition. They have different names for it and so on. But that's the essence of what all this is. So whether you call it the great perfection, or you call it the great mind, or you call it the great position, or the great seal, it all refers to the same thing. It's all pointing to that. So that's the fourth of the fivefold path. And of course, this is very lofty, you know, this is very subtle and takes years, it takes lifetimes to be able to become the embodiment of. You know, so what do you have to do better than this? Whether it's right now, tomorrow, the next day, or the next life. You know, so today is the first day of the rest of your life. You've heard that expression. So what is there more important that you have to do? So the fifth is the realization that we are human beings. The realization that we are here for each other. It's not something that we blast off of this planet or something like that. But right now, we are here still as human beings. And now we have to live this enlightened life. What is this realization? How do we do that? How do we live this enlightened life? So this is living the life of a Buddha. This is living the life of an enlightened one. And with body, speech, and mind, for the benefit of all sentient beings. All these things, all this virtue, all these things that are that were the path, you know, the ground, the path, and the fruition, the result, we see is all the same. We've been on this ground, we've been on this path, we've been in this fruition the whole time. But now we have a change of attitude. Now it all means something quite different to us. We see everything as the enlightened Buddha field. We see everything as the mandala. And it's a matter of attitude. Now, my saying it doesn't make it true in your life yet. You know, you have to, every one of us has to be able to experience that for themselves and to sustain that and to live that. And that's all that's human beings, that's all that we can do. If there's something after that that we call the bardo of reality, so be it. So ha. If it's not, and it's just this, so be it. But if it's just that, if it's just this life, and it's only being a human being, then what's wrong with that? Is it not worth the effort? Is it not worth doing this? Or do we say, oh, it's just a human being, I can go do what I want? I can be nihilistic. I can just do whatever I want. I'll let you decide what it is. So we don't know. That's part of being a human being. We don't know. And being able to realize that, you see, again, is part of the realization of the Mahamudra, and not expecting anything else beyond that. And then somebody might say, is that all it is? Why do that? So we do this for the benefit of other beings. And I think we all could agree that whenever we do something for somebody else, it always gives us a great feeling within ourselves that we've helped somebody else, more than if they did something for us. It's nice when somebody does something for us, but when we do something for somebody, there is a visceral experience there. And if we're all sharing that visceral experience, if we're all tuned into that radio station, that's a great thing. Now, on this planet, in this samsara, it may not be possible. We shouldn't have the expectations. But as a human being, what do we have to do that's better than that? So that, in a short description, is the Fivefold Path of Mahamudra. Of course, there's much more to this. You can look at this in chapter 18 in the Jewel Ornament of Liberation. If you've got a copy of the outline, you can see it on page 27, 28, 29, I think it is. You can go over this. You can see this. But this is the frame, this is the structure that we are embarking on. This is the superstructure of it, with all its ornaments and so on like that, all fleshed out, all the walls are finished, and all the doors are installed, and all the windows are installed, and so on like that. And it's illusory. It's just within our mind, but it's just an illusory fabrication of our mind in order to give us a focus, as temporary as that is, in order that we may be liberated and remain liberated. I've talked to you before about the bardos. The bardos are the intermediate states, and there's 6 intermediate states. We're in the state of living. And within this state of living, there is the state of living of the dreams and of meditation. That's within the living. Then when we die, we go through the bardo, the intermediate state of dying, of death. And then that takes us into the bardo of reality. And then if we're not able to maintain the purity to remain in that reality, we want to be born again into the bardo of living. So we enter back into the bardo of corruption, back into the bardo of fabrication, back into the bardo of the mind, all these things, the body again. All this is all remanifested until we can remain in that bardo of reality. So I've said that every one of our meditations is a rehearsal for that going from the bardo of living into the bardo of death, into the bardo of reality. And the goal is not to recognize any difference between any of those positions, that it's all just perfectly clear. And it's not experienced as a human being. It's it's beyond expression. We can use the metaphor of a spirit, but again, that's another conceptual word. But to not know, to not recognize, to just be the beam of light, to just be the space, whatever that is. So does anybody have anything you'd like to say? Any comments? Any questions?
I have a question. First of all, I just want to thank everybody for what they've said tonight. It's been a great discussion, and especially you, Lance. Thank you for your knowledge. The question I had is about the Mahamudra itself. And it says that on Wikipedia that the founder of the Kagyu lineage, Gampopa, he's the person who coined the term, or Mahamudra. And so I guess the question is, what existed in between Buddha and the Kagyu founder? And you know,
I don't know. I'm not that much of a scholar that I can really comment intelligently on that. You know,
right.
The Buddha certainly taught about these things, taught about the samadhi, and what words the Buddha actually used, I couldn't tell you. And actually, that's the focus of my attention these days, is reading the sutras, studying the sutras, which are supposed to be the translations, the written down words of what the Buddha said, you know, but he taught in Sanskrit language before it was a written language. So it wasn't written down for yet another few hundred years. So I can't comment on that. It doesn't matter to me.
Truth. So it further explains the Mahamudra is defined by Gampopa as the, quote, realization of the natural state as awareness emptiness, absolutely clear and transparent without root.
Right.
Which it pretty much links with what you've been explaining all night.
Yeah.
I like the idea of the natural state of things as awareness emptiness, to be aware that it's all just emptiness.
Yes. Emptiness is another conceptual word to talk about the nature of phenomena as emptiness. The nature of phenomena, and phenomena is the display of that which cannot be expressed.
Beautiful.
That's the Dharmakaya, the Sambhogakaya, and the Nirmanakaya. The Dharmakaya is that which cannot be expressed. The Sambhogakaya is a meditational display of that which cannot be expressed. And the Nirmanakaya is the emanation of that manifesting into form in order to lead us to ultimately that inexpressible experience.
Wow.
It's pretty far out, isn't it?
Yeah. it gets closer to you know, linking that movie The Matrix with Buddhism and how Buddhism has came before that movie to explain exactly what that movie's kind of suggesting, which is the mind as such.
No doubt. Yeah. Thank you for your comment.
Thank you, Lance.
So tell me, did this talk hurt anybody? Did this make you more confused? Was it inspirational? How did it land on you, Matt?
The talk in general tonight.
Yeah.
Very good. It's more inspiring in the sense of sometimes I need like a little kind of kick in the butt or something of like look, dude, you need to make sure you're like really, you know, dedicating yourself in the way that you want to be, the way that you will have wanted to a year from now, what you wanted yourself to be doing now. Like, don't be lazy. Like, what's really important to you.
Does it give you a sense of the structure of that there is a there is a a context of all of this?
Yeah. And I think for me, the more I can simplify things, the better.
Does this simplify or does this confuse things?
This simplifies it more than other presentations of the path, even within Tibetan Buddhism, that and especially looking at it in the book you were referring to, I think the book you made or something,
Yes.
where it goes through like the stuff that breaks down like the bodhicitta, the deity yoga, the guru yoga, the Mahamudra, as kind of being the key defining things, is a good way, a helpful way for me to look at it. And but yeah, for me needing to continually simplify things, I think of like, okay, right now what do I need to be doing now? Just like have that structure and then be working on the renunciation and the bodhicitta is really the relative bodhicitta is what I need to be doing the most.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Zara, how about you? How did this land on you?
I'm here. Sorry. For me, Lance. Oh, sorry. We need to
Sorry,
meditate.
no. Go ahead. It's a robocall somewhere. Go ahead.
That's funny. Well, I mean, for me, I've been really forthcoming about my journey so far. This is in the last year. Your teachings were always helping me. In the last year, the changes you've made, the modifications, I get it. Like the light bulb is coming on, and every morning now I keep saying you are bodhicitta, and I keep thinking of action bodhicitta like as like something I say as I start my day. And I get it, if that makes sense. Like I get my life now in a way I didn't at such a deep level, profound level, that I understand what like you always say to us, like really contemplate what these words mean, right? When we do the prayers, you're like, think about what these words mean. And before I would just rush through them, right? I'm like mindlessly saying them. Now I understand what precious human life means. I understand why every moment is like, do something precious and important with your body. I get it. I didn't get it before, Lance. In the last few months, I'm like, today, do very important things with your precious human life. I get it. So thank you for, you keep saying the same things over to us. And I think we need that from you, your wisdom. And I'm very blessed that you are our teacher. So thank you, because it resonates in a way that I'm a slow learner, admittedly, but I get it, Lance. So thank you for showing up for us. And I'm so grateful.
Well, thank you. Are you seeing the structure? Are you seeing that, that's what, we were trying to talk about tonight, that there is this there's many structures, but this was the master structure, you know?
I think this was the only way I was going to get it. It had to be this way. Otherwise, it was a mess in my mind. Like I couldn't organize where to start, where to go. And so, yes,
So this is showing that we're moving in a direction, that we have a path, we have a structure that we're following. It's a progression.
yes. Yeah.
Can I ask Zara a question? I don't want to get us like derailed.
Sure, go ahead.
And you've kind of talked about this before, Zara, but what would you say, if you had to distill it down, was at the heart of like way you're approaching things that is being so helpful for you? I know you're having difficulties and stuff now, but it seems to me, like hearing you talk for a while, that your practice has like really borne fruit in really great ways, in ways that mine hasn't quite yet, you know, because I need to work at it more too, but or to the same degree. What would you say? How would you be like, in the most like pithy way possible, what seems to be like the turning point for you, or like the way of approaching it that has led to it having more impact, like it sounds like it has?
Matt, and this is for anyone else, when I finally understood, this is such a buzzword, when I finally understood karma, I started letting go of everything. Like, I'm going to give you an example. People make fun of me. I pick up money all the time, like pennies, coin, it doesn't matter. And I say, I'm picking this up for so-and-so, and I give it to them. I'm like, this is for your abundance of, and today I stopped and gave someone a $20 bill at the grocery store. And normally I don't get into that, right? I'm reinforcing homelessness, right? But the more you give away, like when I understood karma, to answer your question succinctly, when I understood karma, like it's actually real. The law of cause and effect, like we can environmentally see it, right? The green light, you push the gas, the red light, you push stop, right? You can see that sequence. That is so profoundly true for spiritual cause and effect. The more you practice, do good things, let go of the bad things. And when you like, that changed my life. When I started trusting that at a spiritual level, my life got exponentially better. Like, I think I shared with you what happened to me privately on that group. When I understood that moment, that was joy, even though it was like a very negative, dark place, I said, no, this is what Lance said. This is the end of something negative. I understand that profound moment, and it changed my life at that moment, December 24th, 2021. My life changed when I understood. So karma, cause and consequences. It was that simple. If you believe in and can understand that and let go of needing and just saying in this moment, like that's profoundly changed my life and my practice. So the action aspect of being bodhicitta and then seeing it, I'm like, and you start paying attention, Matt, you're like, oh shit, good stuff is happening. When you say nice things, good things happen, right? You start giving things away. When I started letting go of money, guess what? Money started coming my way. Like it just, like things started resolving. And then you have to trust this process. The more time you make for meditation and spiritual practice, you actually become peaceful. So like when Lance says the process or giving an hour a day, that hour turns into profound inner peace, right? Like, so giving, you're like, I want to watch Game of Thrones. Instead of watching Keeping Up with the Kardashians tonight, I'm going to meditate. And that's going to have a profound exponential impact on my well-being 23 other hours of the day. I'm going to sleep well. I'm going to have good dreams, but you have to trust that process. And I had to, but that's been a 2-year journey. I don't want you to think that happened overnight, or anyone else to be like, oh, Sarah just woke up and started doing karma stuff. It was like ups and downs, regression. It was not linear, and it was not a steady state of progression. I had moments of backsliding. And now I give into it. Now I like karma, cause and consequences is my motto. Lance, what do you think about that, Lance? I'm curious. How does that sound?
I think it's all great. I mean, that's your
Yeah.
experience. So your experience is as valid as anybody else's. And I think it's great. And you come to that articulation of that experience, and that's really great. And that's what we all need to do, is to be able to articulate our experience, at least to ourselves, if not to others.
I hope that was helpful, Matt. I'm sometimes not as good as being as distinct as others, and I'm trying to write stuff down, but karma, understanding karma.
That's super helpful. If I was silent, I didn't respond, it was because I was just sitting with what you were saying. No, thank you so much. That's actually super helpful, and something I've been kind of thinking in the similar lines and spoken like a true behaviorist as well out there.
Yeah, I want to say one other thing quickly to anyone else. I started letting other people win. Like in most conversations, I just am like, okay, you can be right. Like my ego, that was another thing I just let go of. Like, excuse my directness, but you only have so many FUCKs you can give away in a day, the things you care about. I don't care about being right anymore. Like in relation to convention, you can be right. Like I just keep my mouth shut a lot more now and let other people say what they need to say, and I'm just silent, like in a discerning way. Like I don't need to really say anything most of the time.
That's really good.
Yeah, Lance, it is good because I'm a talker. I like to talk a lot.
All right. Well, we're running out of time. I want to give anybody else a chance to say something if they haven't already. So Maya, Vikram, Ram, if you'd like to say something, Gary or Mark, if you'd like to say something, Karina, Gavin. So please turn your microphone on and offer something.
I just wanted to say that I'm very thankful for this talk and the discussion and your teachings, Lance. I think that this definitely is going to have an impact on creating more structure for myself down the line. And I think that really, solidifying your dedication to the path and this practice is really important. And yeah, I think that this is kind of helping me see it in a way that I didn't before.
Very good. So this is the goal of our Buddha practice study. That is Buddha Study 101 on Monday nights, and then Buddha Practice 201 on Sundays. So these two are running concurrently with each other because we need both simultaneously. So we're going to start at the beginning and build up again. We're going to go through this, the circle again, and it'll mean so much more to everybody. Having gone through this 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, however many times, each time it means more. And we'll try and keep it fresh and speak of it in slightly different terms and get people's feedback, because the discussion of this is really, really important. It's proven to be an integral part of what we're doing, because it's through the discussion that we hear what we're thinking, and that's important to be able to accept and to know what we're doing and how we need to change. So thank you, Maya. Okay. Anybody else have a comment you'd like to make? And it doesn't have to be anything special, just your own personal thoughts about the structure. That's what I'm curious about, is what you think about the structure, because then I'll know that it meant something to you.
I can only say one thing.
Yes?
When I first started coming to, I guess this is our Sangha, I'm unsure. I had a great deal of structure, and that is, I added a great deal of structure to my life as a way to genuinely let this in, long before I had an altar, for instance. And what's happened for me over the last several weeks or a month, I guess, is that I've begun to take everything for granted, because we have these sessions 3 times a week, and I'm meditating less now than I was a month and a half ago. So this has been very useful for me to remind me that without creating my structure every morning, to change the water, to dust my altar, to adjust the chair that I meditate in and make sure it's where I want it, etc. Without doing those things every morning, I'm meditating less. Plain and simple.
Well, is that a good thing or a bad thing?
It's a bad thing, because I think I should meditate at least once a day.
Oh, I see.
And I'm not now. I was when we began, when I began coming, but
So
now
why-
I'm not.
So why do you think that is?
I think because the sessions that we have together are, I'm letting them supplant the need for personal sitting and meditating. I'm telling myself that in effect, our meetings are the meditation. But and that may be true to a degree, no matter how much I respect you and appreciate what you do for us. I need to sit. That's what I need to do. And I'm going to get back to it now.
Is it a random sit, or is it a liberating sit?
It's liberating. It does help me.
So that's the subtlety I think I was trying to explain before.
Yeah, indeed. And I recognize that. I'm
And
sure
becomes
others
and
did
it's
also.
very natural. It's very natural, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Yeah, without any effort, you're just gliding through that. And is there a peacefulness? Is there a happiness?
There's a sense of finding myself in a way, of returning to something. I think I mentioned to you once, I was a meditator long, long ago on a very regular basis. And for unknown reasons at this point, I let that go. But I find myself rejoining that person who meditated every day, no matter what. And I think that's going to be very, very good for me and good for others around me.
Very good, Mark. Thank you very much for sharing that.
Thank you.
Yes. Karina, I see you turned on your microphone. Did you or Gavin want to say something?
Yeah, I'm gonna say, like for me, thank you so much for conversation today. It's really very helpful, I hope. Because for me, meditate alone, it's really hard. Still, now I can do mantra round like very easy more than meditate, because like collective meditation where many people together. For me, like I can concentrate. For alone, I'm really like, for me 10 minutes sit, it's many things like stop my meditation always. And yeah, and I want to sure meditate and learn how to do this alone. Maybe like after Vipassana. This is a skill when you 10 days meditate every day for 16 hours after, like it's good start for yourself. That's it.
Very good. Thank you. And I know that the Karina in particular is really taken to a practice, and it's really helped her over the past few months. And so I really appreciate
Yeah, I'm very
your commitment to the practice. So thank you very much. So
thank you.
Vikram, I saw that you turned your microphone on for a moment. And did you have something you'd like to add?
Sure. Yeah, I was just going to say thank you everybody for sharing. I think this conversation about structure resonated with me because I don't have a structured practice or meditation schedule. So it just reinforced to me that that's something I need to start like figuring out and developing over time. So
Very good. Thank you. And if there's any way that we can help you do that, just let me know and we'll make time to talk about it.
definitely, thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much. All right. Well, then, thank you all very much for your attention and for your sharing your thoughts on this, and opening yourselves up is really great. I mean, that's part of the process. You know, we have to overcome our afflictive emotions. We have to overcome our mental misconceptions, and we have to recognize and deal with our habitual tendencies. And these habitual tendencies are revealed to us through our speech, both the things that we see that we've changed and the things that we need to change. So that's why we encourage the discussion, because it gets you invested in the process. So And that's very important. If we remain mute, not as much power there. All right, so then if we can go to our 101 books and we do our dedications. So we begin on the lineage dedication prayer on page 18. And we'll just do the English, going through this, through the dedication prayer for Lord Jigten Sumgun. Dorje Chang, Talopa, Naropa, Marpa, Milarepa, Dharma Gampopa, Pagmadrupa, and Lordri Kumpa, please bestow upon us the most auspicious blessings of all the Kagyu Lamas. By this virtue, may I achieve the all-knowing state, and may all who travel on the waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death cross the ocean of samsara by defeating all enemies, confusion, the cause of suffering. Bodhicitta, the excellent and precious mind, where it is unborn, may it arise. Where it is born, may it not decline, but ever increase higher and higher. I pray that the Lama may have good health. I pray that the Lama may have long life. I pray that your Dharma activities spread far and wide. I pray that I may not be separated from you. As Manjushri, the warrior, realized the ultimate state, and as did Samantabhadra, I will follow in their path and fully dedicate all merit for all sentient beings. By the blessing of the Buddha who attained the three kayas, by the blessing of the truth of the unchanging Dharma as such, by the blessing of the indivisible Sangha order, may the merit I share bear fruit. By the virtues collected in the three times, by myself and all beings in samsara and nirvana, and by the innate word of virtue, may I and all sentient beings quickly attain unsurpassed, perfect, complete, precious enlightenment. May the teachings of the great Trikumpa Ratna Shri, who is omniscient, Lord of the Dharma, Master of interdependence, continue and increase through study, practice, contemplation, and meditation until the end of samsara. Glorious, holy, venerable, precious, kind root and lineage lamas, divine assembly of yidams and assemblies of Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, Yogins, Yoginis, and Dakinis, dwelling in the 10 directions, please hear my prayer. May the virtues collected in the three times by myself and all sentient beings in samsara and nirvana, and the innate word of virtue, not result in the 8 worldly concerns, the 4 causes of samsara, or rebirth as a Shravaka or Pratyeka Buddha. May all mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me and mine, obstructors who harm, misleading Mars and the hordes of demons, experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly attain unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. By the power of this vast root of virtue, may I benefit all beings through my body, speech, and mind. May the afflictions of desire, hatred, ignorance, arrogance, and jealousy not arise in my mind. May attachment to fame, reputation, wealth, honor, and concern for this life not arise for even a moment. May my mind stream be moistened by loving kindness, compassion, and bodhicitta, and through that may I become a spiritual master with good qualities equal to the infinity of space. May I gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra in this very life. May the torment of suffering not arise even at the time of my death. May I not die with negative thoughts. May I not die confused by wrong view. May I not experience an untimely death. May I die joyfully and happily in the great luminosity of the mind as such and the pervading clarity of the Dharmata. May I, in any case, gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra at the time of death or in the bardo. Om, Ah, Hum. Om, Ah, Hum. Om, Ah, Hum. May my body, speech, and mind become inseparable with the body, speech, and mind of all the enlightened ones for the benefit of all sentient beings. Thank you all very much. This really concludes our study of the Jewel Ornament Liberation, our introduction to the Jewel Ornament Liberation. So next time we're going to begin at the beginning again. We're going to remind ourselves we're going to tell the story of Shakyamuni Buddha. So that'll be next week. So if you've heard it before, please join us because we need your support, and you might hear something that you haven't heard before. And if you haven't heard it before, I think a lot of things are going to start making some more sense to you, where you recognize and understand the meaning of the Buddha, who the Buddha is. So he was a human being like us who was able to liberate himself from attachment and aversion, suffering and desire, etc. So we'll be talking about that next time. Thank you.
Thank you, Lance. Bye.